Now that the straight pavilion has been created, we'll move on to creating a curved pavilion that will fit nicely with the freeform pool. To do so, we will turn on the pavilion profile layer and make it the current layer, and we'll turn off the pool rectangle layer. We'll make the perspective view maximized so that we can see the cross-section profiles that we'll be using, and then we'll maximize the top view and we'll zoom in order to create the arc that we'll use for our reference geometry. To start that, we'll actually create a line, which will be the center line for the arc, 150 feet long, straight down. And we'll zoom so we can see that. And we'll use this line to create actually two arcs. So the first one we'll make will be a 30-foot arc, starting from the bottom of that line back to the origin. And the arc command is initially looking for a number of degrees of the arc. Instead, we're going to give it a length, an arc length of 30 feet. And we're going to take this first 30-foot arc that we've made, and we're going to mirror it so that it goes to the other side of the line. We'll just use the line as a way to mirror that. And in fact, I'm going to delete the first arc. And I'm going to make a second arc, again using the end of the 150-foot line as its origin. I'm going to come up to the origin of our workspace and again tell it a length, in this case, of 20 feet, which will be the shorter distance that we will extrude the interior walls of the pavilion. So we have two arcs to work with, one for the exterior pavilion shell, and the other one is for the interior pavilion shell. To work with these, I might actually, because of the directions that I want to extrude them, go back to the top and mirror both of them again. And this time, I'm going to turn off copy yes. I just want to flip them. So copy says no. And I've actually flipped them from one side to the other so that I can now come to the perspective window, as you can see, and I'm going to create the solids. I'm going to use the solid extrude planar curve, this time a long curve command. I'll start by selecting the outer profile of the pavilion, and I'll hit return. And it wants me to select the path curve near the start. And this is very important where you click on the curve, because if you click near the end, it will extrude this in a very odd manner. So I need to click on the 30-foot arc very near the beginning of where I want it to be, and it will then extrude correctly along that path to create a curving portion. In this case, it's half of the pavilion, and that's okay. We'll create the other half by mirroring this after. So I'm going to repeat the command just by hitting the space bar, and it wants to know which curve to extrude. In this case, I'll select the small profile of the interior walls. I'll hit return, and again, it wants the path curve near the beginning, near the start, so I'll click way down here on it. And you'll see that the 20-foot arc is used to extrude the small wall in the other direction. To complete the curving pavilion in its basic form, I'm now going to take the profile of the larger portion of the pavilion and I'm going to mirror that so that it now extends on both sides of the center line. To do that, I'll select the mirror command, and I'll go back because last time I asked it not to copy. This time I will click copy yes, so that when I mirror this, I will actually have both the starting geometry and what it has become afterwards. And I simply need to connect 2 points along its center line in order for this to now be perfectly mirrored around the center line. And so we can see that we have a pavilion of 60 feet length with a 20-foot interior volume, but instead of being a straight line, it's now created on a curving profile. As we did before, we can go in here and we can draw end walls and other things. You'll notice that this did not, in plan, make it with radial walls, so the end walls are perfectly flat. So this is an extrusion. And if we go to the right-hand view and maximize that, we can zoom in here, and we could use the geometry that we had to create end walls and caps for this, as we did with the rectangular building, in order to put closure, if we want to ends of this, and then place it into the landscape. To do so, I'll draw some reference geometry and profiles exactly as I did for the straight pavilion, creating a polyline end wall to cap this off. In fact, I'll create both polylines while I'm here, simply repeating the steps I used in the previous example, but doing it more quickly now. So I have a reference geometry curve that I'll delete. I have a profile curve. I'll use that to create a straight solid of 1 foot thickness. And I'll take that and hide it. And I can even delete its profile. And I'll take the other profile and I'll create another straight, solid, 1 foot thick piece of geometry. And I will now show all of the solids that I've created. And I can take this end wall and I can move it from its corner out here to the corner of the pavilion. And I'll take the smaller end wall and I'll move it from its corner to the corner of the pavilion. Delete this reference geometry, and in plan I'll delete the two curves that I created, and I will now use the selection tools to select all the closed polysurfaces, which is essentially the same as saying select all solids. And I will use the solid union tool to create one solid out of all of those, as we did before. And then I will come back to the layers, and under the freeform pool layer, I will add a sublayer called Pavilion. And I'll give that layer a gray color. And I'll take all of the solids I created on the Pavilion profile layer just now, these curving ones, and I will change their layer to Pool Freeform Pavilion Layer, so that when I turn off Pavilion Profile, I can still see that. And if I make Pavilion Profile active and I turn off the Pool Freeform layer, I still see the profile. So again, making this pavilion the active layer, turning off the profile, I have a curving pavilion that I can take and I can start to place in relationship to this pool. I could put it behind the pool, in front, at the edge. In this case, I might start by rotating the pavilion. So I might use the rotation command. And I can actually click anywhere outside of this, and I can rotate it 90 degrees or some other to some other angle. I can take the pool and rotate it again from one of its corners to some angle like this. I can then move it into a relationship with the pool that I think might be nice. And I can look at this and I can say, on another version, I might want to actually give a more than 150 degree radius to this. And I'll look at this in 3 dimensions and see how it looks. It's sitting fairly nicely there. I might, in the right-hand view, want to raise it up slightly. So again, I will move this. Holding Shift, I'll bring it up slightly. And I'll see how it's sitting in relationship to the ground. I'll go back to the right-hand view. I'll move it again some more upward. Perhaps something like that. And I'll want to move it up a bit more and get it to the right elevation before I trim the ground plane away to fit this in. And I might move left or right, up or down, forward or back. But you can see I'm moving it in the right-hand view, but I'm seeing the results in the perspective view, and I'm looking at how much of the ground is being cut away by this. And so when I get it into a position I like, as before, I can then do a trim, and I can select the ground plane and trim that away. I might have to click twice on the ground plane in order to get this sitting in a nice position adjacent to the pool. And in this case, it's a curving pavilion on the other side of the pool. In a final video, we'll talk about making another kind of freeform pavilion using a different kind of solid or surface creation tool. Thank you.